Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. Before I show you what we're going to be making today, I'm going to show you what I scored last week. And I'll actually be using this product to make today's project. So there's a lady that I met a couple of weeks ago. She loves to recycle and rescue all sorts of things. And I got a few big rolls of a cotton pinprick wadding off her a few weeks ago as well, which I'll show you in a future video. But this one here is, I don't actually know what material it is. She said that it's from a company that used to make the vinyl signs on the sides of trucks. So I'm imagining this is some kind of a tarp material, but it's not the tarp that you would put over your trailer. This is quite rigid fabric or material, and there's some great colours, and I've got a really big box full of this stuff. So it kind of looks like vinyl, and it has a vinyl feel to it, but it's much thinner than vinyl, and I've already tried sewing this stuff up. It sews really well, but it doesn't turn through very well. So I don't know what this material is called. It's from a factory in Richmond, or a town near Richmond, or a suburb near Richmond in Victoria, Australia. And it was just left on the side of the road. Apparently this company that does these tarp things just puts box lots out the front of the factory and people can come and get it as they please. So this is another one, big roll of that. And I saw, so there's a white as well. So this one here has a stripe on the side. So I reckon that could be used in a bag, well, in something anyway. There's a lot of stuff here for me to sew up. Mum, of course, is going to get some as well. And yeah, there's some great colours. There's the blues, black, and there's forest green and grey and charcoal as well. So today we're going to be working with a blue, and I'll show you what we're making. So I've just had another look to see where this factory was, and it was in a suburb called Cremorne, which is right next to Richmond in Victoria. So if you have any luck, if you're really close to that area, look for a textile company over there in Cremorne and see if you can find some of this stuff. I hope you do. Anyway, this is what we're going to be making today. Just a plain, simple cosmetic or toiletry pouch, can be used for a pencil pouch. Now, I mentioned to you that it's really difficult to turn through, so I've made normal, just straight corners on the bottom here. The project we're going to be doing today is going to have curved corners on the bottom, and I hope that that'll make it much easier to turn through. Let's get to it. So in this case, size really doesn't matter, but the two fabric pieces, or the material pieces that I'm using, are 10.5 by 6.5 inches, which is about 27 by 16 or 17 centimetres. And the zip that I'm using is a 10-inch or 25 centimetre zip. And then we have a scrap piece of the same product, which I'm going to be using as a zipper tab. I'm going to be turning the sides in of the zip as well. So there's not much to it. It's unlikely that you're going to have this same kind of material, but you can use vinyl as well. You can also use leather, and you could use that clear plastic stuff as well. I'm going to cut a strip of material off that is the same width as my zip, which is about 1 inch. So I've cut this tab at 1 inch by 1.25 inches. Now what we need to do is chop off the end of our zip here, and from this metal tab here we're going to measure across 9 inches. And from that to this end we'll just make a mark here, And right next to that mark, we're going to go out just another 1/4 inch, or about 6 millimeters. This will be the cutting line of our zip. So we've got the sewing line here and the cutting line. I'm going to cut that off now. And with our tab, what we're going to do is fold that in 3 equal pieces, or three equal sides. So I've got the long side along here, fold that into the center and fold that into the center. And you want to make sure that the edge that isn't folded meets up with the fold on this side here. So we've got a folded edge and a raw edge. You want that to meet up. Open that out, and then we're going to place the folded edge on that first line we marked at 9 inches. That will sit right over the top there, and the raw edge will sit behind. So what we're going to do is take it to the machine. We're going to sew the raw edge in place first. Sew straight down there. Then we'll stay at the machine, fold this over, and we'll stitch along the top as well. That secures the zipper teeth really well, so we've got it double stitched. So this is the wrong side of the material, and you can see the creases that I've got there. We're going to place the raw edge underneath the foot with the zipper tape faced up directly over the top. And I'll start a little bit in from the outside edge so that the two pieces don't shift. So that's been sewn in. It doesn't really matter that they haven't lined up, because none of this will be seen when we sew the zip in. Now we can fold this edge over and then fold that over again until it sits in line with that stitching, or with the raw edge that we've got there. And once you're happy with the placement, we can sew that as well. All right, so that's our tab in place. What we're going to do now is, with both of our pieces, and if you were working on a printed fabric, you'd want to make sure that you have right sides, or you want to make sure you've got the right orientation. So this is the top and this is the top. So we're going to flip that around, and on this end only we're going to measure 1/2 inch from the outside edge. And we'll make a mark on both pieces, and that's where the tab is going to sit on our material. So I'm going to be using double-sided tape to secure my zipper tape down, and I'm going to start that from that mark I've made, and I'll finish it about 1 inch from the other end. I'll do the same for this one. And now we can place the zip down. So we're going to place the zipper tape faced down, and I'm going to line up the edge 1/2 inch from the outside edge. That will allow for about a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, plus a little gap in the middle. Okay, so we're going to take this to the machine, and we're going to sew all the way across. There's no need to sew to the end. When you get to this end here, where the metal tab is, flip this out and you can secure that in place. And I'll just use a couple of clips. So with that secured in place, we can go and sew all the way across to the other end, double stitch at the end there and at this end as well. So when I'm doing this, I actually prefer to sew here and then go forward and just leave that loose. So I'll start where the tab is. And then I'll turn this around, flip the end of the zipper tape out. I'm going to sew up to it. And I'll flip that out and backstitch. And then I can keep going to the other end. And to secure this in place a little bit better, I'll just stitch over the end bit. Now before we do the other side of the zip, we need to top stitch. So I'm going to increase my stitch length to 4. And this is a little bit stiff to fold over, but if you hold your tongue right, you'll be fine. So I do want to sew all the way from one end to the other. All right, we've fixed that one in place, and now we need to do this side. Remove the tape, and I'm going to line up the side edge here and the top edge. And we can take this one to the machine and sew all the way down here. And when we get down here, we'll flip it out again. I've reduced my stitch length back to what it was before. I'm sewing up to that metal clip again, and I'll backstitch. That way I can pull the tab out to the side and hold that in place. And then I'll increase my stitch length again, and we can top stitch the other side. And once again, we're going to sew all the way from one end to the other. So the zip's all finished. All we need to do now is close up the sides. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the square corners on this one were very difficult to turn through. So we're going to make this with rounded corners or rounded edges. And it really doesn't matter what size curve you want to make. So my curves are going to be 2 inches. So from the corner down and the corner across, I'm starting my curve, at 1 inch. Now we don't need to leave an opening on the side or the bottom of a bag, but we do need to remember to leave our zipper open. Place the right sides together. And I think I'll cut out these shapes rather than sew around them this time. Okay, let's go back to the machine. We're going to sew this top edge together, and this is really difficult to sew because of the stiffness of the tab that we've got here. So the best thing to use would be your zipper foot or a really narrow foot if you've got one, and sew as close as you can get comfortably to the edge of the tab. It's not really important that you sew right next to it. So if you can only do 1/4 of an inch seam, that's fine. I'm going to try for about 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch. When I sew these edges, I like to actually secure the top edge first. I'll sew down a little bit, then I'll sew the other side, so I'll secure the top edge, and then everything else can just be eased in together if it needs to be. So making sure the two top edges here are lined up perfectly. And I'm going to come down just a little bit, and then I'm going to place my needle into the fabric. And once that's down, I can put my foot down and the edges of the fabric aren't going to be misaligned. So I'll back stitch here. Flip around and do the other side. And I'll do the same thing. I'll make sure the edges are lined up. You can cut off these tabs if you like, which is what I will quickly go and do as well. Once again, I'll pop my needle down. That will hold the fabric in place. And then I can back stitch and then go forward, and then I'll sew all the way around to meet the other side. As with anything that is quite stiff or solid, because I'm just using a regular sewing thread, I'll go and double stitch this now. So we are now completely finished. We don't have to do anything more to this except for trimming the edges. So because this is going to be a stiff one to work with when we turn it through, I'm going to just remove some of the excess, and close to the curve, I'll cut really close to the curve here. Let's turn it through. You can open the zip up all the way now. Okay, I'm not going to lie, this took me a really long time to turn through and to try and get the edges looking nice. I still got a bit of work to do there. I think I need a bigger curve. Now there's a little bit of material left over here. We can cut this in half, or just cut off a very small strip. Fold it in half. And pop it through the hole in the top of the zip there. Put the edges, poke the edges through and give that a pull. And now we're done. So I was really hopeful that the curved edges would simplify the process of turning the bag through. It didn't really take any less time than what the square corners did. In fact, the square corners were probably easier. So if I were to do this again, I would actually make a much bigger curve on the corners, and hopefully that would be easier. I really love sewing with this product. All I know, or all I can imagine it to be, is a tarp fabric for trucks. And if you want to go and source some of this yourself, I'd recommend going to trucking companies or companies that actually make the tarps themselves and see if they have any offcuts of this. I'm sure it's not just available in Australia, it'll be available everywhere in the world. Wherever you can find a company that makes tarps or heavy bags like this, you should be able to find some offcuts to rescue. So I don't know that I'm going to make any more of these in the smaller ones. I might try a bigger curve. I really need to find perhaps a larger project that I can make with this material so that it can be used up and not end up in landfill. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this pouch or purse, and I shall see you next time. Bye for now.